Hello students, myself Sooryaraj, Faculty of Physics. Today we are going to start a new chapter. The chapter name is Motion in a Plane. First of all, we want to discuss what is meant by the term motion in a plane. I think you are familiar with the terms one-dimensional motion, two-dimensional motion and three-dimensional motion. So I'm going to discuss motion in a plane, or it is also termed as two-dimensional motion. So we are going to discuss what is two-dimensional motion, or simply we can represent it as, it can be represented as 2D. Okay, so now I'm going to discuss what is meant by two-dimensional motion or 2D. For that, we have to consider two coordinates. You are familiar with the term coordinates. There are three different coordinates: x-axis, y-axis and z-axis. Now we have to consider two different axes. That is, I'm going to consider x-axis as well as y-axis. So in this board you can see x-axis as well as y-axis. So we can give the names as this is x-axis and this is y-axis. Okay. Now we have to mark, or we have to label the axis on x-axis as well as on y-axis. So I'm going to label the values. This point is technically called as origin. That point is technically called as origin. Okay. So this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, 4, 5, etc. So labeling of x-axis is over. Now we have to label on the y-axis. This point is technically called as origin, and the next point is treated as 1, and the next point is treated as 2, 3, 4, etc. The labeling is over. Now we have to consider an object. We have to consider an object. Yeah, I'm going to consider an object here. This is my object. That cross mark is my object. This cross mark is considered as an object. Now I want to specify the position. We want to specify the position of object. How can we do that? To specify the position, these steps have to be adopted. So, first of all, draw a vertical line from that point. Drawing the vertical line from that point, as we have to draw horizontal line also. Now from our object, we have drawn a vertical line as well as a horizontal line. The point of intersection should be marked. That means in the x-axis the point is 3. In the y-axis, on the y-axis the point is 2. On the x-axis the point is 3. On the y-axis the point is 2. So we can specify the position of the object by 3 x-axis first, comma 2, 3, comma 2. First of all, we have to mark x-axis. X-axis, the corresponding value is 3, comma. The corresponding value for y-axis is 2. So the position of object is 3, 2. Okay. So to specify the position, we used two different coordinates, x as well as y. I'm again repeating my words. To specify the position of objects, to specify the position of our objects, we used two different coordinates. What are they? X coordinate as well as y coordinate. So such kind of motion is called as two-dimensional motion. In the case of two-dimensional motion, we have to use two different coordinates to specify position of an object. Here we can see two coordinates, x coordinate and y coordinate. So two coordinates are used. Those motions in which position of an object can be specified by using two coordinates is called as two-dimensional motion. If we use one coordinate, that is called as one-dimensional. If we use three coordinates, that is called as three-dimensional motion. So in the case of two-dimensional motion, we have to use two coordinates. Such kind of motions are generally called as two-dimensional motion or motion in a plane. Ready? Clear? So what do you mean by two-dimensional motion? Can you explain? Yeah, those motions in which position of an object can be specified by using two coordinates. Okay. Now we are going to discuss the classification of physical quantities. The classification of physical quantities. Physical quantities can be classified into two. Okay, now we are going to discuss the classification. Now we are going to classify the term physical quantities. Yeah, physical quantities can be of two types, or it can be classified into two groups. The first one is called as vectors. What do you mean by vectors? Yeah, those physical quantities which have both magnitude as well as direction. Those physical quantities which have both magnitude and direction is called as vectors. So for a vector quantity, there should be certain magnitude as well as certain direction. That is called as vectors. Another class is called as scalars. Scalars means physical quantities which have only magnitude, no direction. Ready? So physical quantities which have both the magnitude as well as direction is called as vectors. And physical quantities which have only magnitude and no direction is called as scalars. Scalar quantities. Ready? Now we are going to discuss what are the examples of vectors and scalars. One of the example of vector quantity is velocity. Velocity is considered as a vector quantity because it has its own magnitude and direction. At the same time, speed is considered as scalar quantity because it has only magnitude, no direction. So now we have discussed the classification of physical quantities. The subgroups are vectors and scalars. Those physical quantities which have both the magnitude and direction is called as vector. And those physical quantities which have only magnitude is called as scalar. Velocity is an example of vector quantity. Speed is an example of scalar quantity. Okay, today we have started our chapter motion in a plane, and then we have discussed what is meant by two-dimensional motion. What do you mean by two-dimensional motion? Yeah, those motions in which position of an object can be specified by using two coordinates, x and y. Then we have discussed the classification of physical quantities, vectors and scalars, and their examples. By the next class, we are entering into the topic vectors, its classification, addition, multiplication, etc. Okay? So, thank you.